The city of Duncan has taken a step toward healing and improving relations with Australia since the killing of 22-year-old Christopher Lane. That process became even more important after a former Australian government official urged people not to travel to the United States because of what he saw as a dangerous gun culture. The Duncan Rotary Club made the offer for an official visit, and the Washington, D.C.-based Australian embassy sent their consul general to the city that has been the focus of intense international media coverage for the last 2 weeks.
The street where Christopher Lane was gunned down runs through an affluent neighborhood of well-groomed yards, expensive vehicles parked in driveways of even more expensive homes. Lane fell from a .22 caliber bullet to the back in front of a horse stable. The spot across the street is now marked by a memorial. The suspects were arrested in a far different part of town, where poverty is clearly visible and crime is common. 3 young men sit in jail accused of a crime that could cost 2 of them their lives, or all of them decades behind bars. The murder of Christopher Lane sparked international media coverage focusing on Duncan and the apparent senselessness of the crime. Coverage that included these comments from former Australian Deputy Prime Minister Tim Fischer on CNN's Piers Morgan program.
So it is another example of murder mayhem on Main Street. Yes, people thinking of going to the USA on business or tourist trips should think carefully about it, given the statistical fact you are 15 times more likely to be shot dead in the USA than in Australia per capita per million people.
That stunned the community of Duncan to think that somehow its streets were now that dangerous. Arnold Nelson is the president of the Duncan Rotary Club and a local pastor.
That made people angry and defensive, and it was moving us in a direction that I didn't think was very helpful. So I suggested that if we invited them, we who would ordinarily not be on his radar screen might respond well.
So the Duncan Rotary Club invited someone from the Australian Embassy to come for a visit. Moreau Colobrich, the Consul General of the Australian Embassy, took them up on the offer and visited Duncan on Wednesday. Colobrich declined to talk about the comments of the former Deputy Prime Minister, but did not shy away from talking about the differences between the U.S. and Australia on the issue of gun ownership.
But first, a scene of horror and carnage in the Tasmanian town of Port Arthur tonight, where as many as 25 people have been shot dead in Australia's worst massacre.
Following the loss of 35 lives in a shooting massacre in 1996 in Port Arthur, Tasmania, Australia made major changes to the nation's gun laws.
A ban on certain semi-automatic and self-loading rifles and shotguns, standard licensing and permit criteria, storage requirements and inspections, and greater restrictions on the sale of firearms and ammunition.
Those requirements also include genuine reasons for owning a firearm that do not include self-defense. And since the laws were changed, there's not been another mass murder in Australia. But Colobrich had a larger point to make, the impact the city of Duncan had on him.
I've just been overwhelmed by the friendliness and the community spirit in Duncan, and I think I can understand why people from Australia feel so at ease in the state of Oklahoma.
The Consul General explained that over 1 million Aussies visit the U.S. every year, and that Duncan has not been removed from their map.
The people of Duncan need to understand that we know they are a fine community that holds dear the values that Chris was taught to embrace: family, education and career. In these tough times, I would ask that they continue to embrace those values as the cornerstones of their community.
And that is what Duncan plans to do.
It's going to do a lot for the healing process of our community, so it's important that, he came and gave us those kind words, and we appreciate it very much.
Duncan Mayor Gene Brown believes people will come to understand that violence can happen anywhere, and Duncan is still a good place.
It hurts to hear people talking about your community in a way that some things have been said, but at the same time, we know it's not Duncan, so we have to keep our heads high and just move forward.
A view shared by Jeannie Bowden with the Duncan Area Economic Development Foundation. She says the Consul General's visit illustrated the important links between Australia, Duncan, and Oklahoma.
The partnerships in agriculture and in business and in the military in our local area, Fort Sill. It was just true that we do have a lot in common.
Bowden says in the face of the publicity the murder case has received, it is more important than ever that Duncan continue to focus on what has always worked for them.
One of the things that we do best around here is pull up your bootstraps and get to work. So that's not only just a Duncan and Stephens County thing, that's a state of Oklahoma thing. It's going to be difficult the next couple of years, but we're going to get past it, and it's going to be okay.
On September 2nd, Christopher Lane would have turned 23. More than $200,000 has been donated to the Lane family, so they decided to use some of that money to help others by creating a lasting link between Australia and the United States in the name of baseball and Christopher Lane.
They'll use some of the funds to establish a baseball foundation to allow more talented young Australians to pursue their dreams here in the US, as did Chris. This is a remarkable reflection on the Lane family's enduring commitment that Chris's legacy remains rooted both in Australia, his place of birth, and the US, where he came to study and where he made such an impact in the community.
As a further honor to Christopher Lane, the Essendon Baseball Club, where he grew up playing baseball, plans to build the first ever Little League baseball field in Australia. All they need is a commitment from Major League Baseball to help pay for it. The New York Daily News reported just days ago that the MLB is committed to doing just that in time for the 2014 season opener, which will be in Sydney, Australia.